Hey, what is going on, everyone? Fortnite OG Reloaded has just released, and with it, it's an entirely new game mode that's based on Chapter 1, but is a lot different in a lot of ways. So we're going to cover today how you can be successful in the mode with the most important topics that you need to know about the game mode. We'll cover how historically accurate is it relative to Chapter 1, the state of the weapon meta, the differences in the loot system, the overall pacing in the game, and the state of healing as in relation to like how easily you can find heals. Now, the first thing to remember is that historical accuracy doesn't automatically mean fun. Things can be non-historical and be really fun, so it doesn't necessarily correlate. But, you know, the OG season might be halfway there, maybe about a 5. This is probably a 2 to 3. It's inspired off of Chapter 1, but by no means is it anywhere near what Chapter 1 was like. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not fun. Let's move on to the weapon meta. The weapon meta is inspired by Chapter 1, but it's not historical. When you look around, there's the Ranger shotguns in the game. That was never in the game of Chapter 1. And there's the mini bounce pads. Those do not exist in Chapter 1. And also, there's just a huge mixture of random seasons. I've seen the TAC SMG and Standard SMG. You know, those really never coexisted in Chapter 1. Just a lot of non-historical things in that they haven't selected, like, we're going to do Season 5. They just kind of done a mesh of Chapter 1. So don't go back to some old Season 5 videos and look at the meta there, because it's not going to line up with any season. In terms of your loot system differences, it's non-historical in a lot of ways because there are extra chests in a lot of locations that simply did not exist before. So you can't like use YapOG or your Chapter 1 knowledge to remember where the loot is because they've added in a whole bunch of extra loot. And the reason why they've done that is even though 40 people start at the start of the game, because there's respawning, that means there's effectively 80 to 100 people, so there has to be extra loot so you can actually find enough weapons and heals to get going. So just keep that in mind. You can't rely on your old knowledge of the map to assume that's where the loot is going to be today. But unlike YapOG, there is floor loot that does work, so don't just be going for chests, floor loot works too. Next, let's talk about the overall pace of the game. It's a mini battle royale, and there's a 40-person map, which if there was no respawning, the pace of the game would be roughly similar to how it would feel in historical Chapter 1 with the bigger map and 100 people lobbies. But because there's a lot of respawning, you know, you can respawn 5, 10 times in the game. There's effectively, I'd say, around 100 people that are in the game, depending on how many times they're respawning. So what that means is that the map is very crowded. The pace of the game is very fast. You know, trying to play a very slow-paced playstyle just really is very hard to do because it's just going to be crazy. And the only way to fully eliminate a squad is to eliminate every single person on that squad. If even one person is alive with 1 health, all their teammates will respawn in 30 seconds. So it means even in the smaller zones, there's still 25, 30 people around, and it's a very crowded zone. It kind of feels like pseudo-competitive in that way. Obviously, the players are not at the level of competitive players, but that's kind of the idea you get. It's very crowded in the end zones. Now, at a certain point, though, respawning does get turned off. So you can't just respawn infinitely forever. There's not 30 people at the very end of the game, but it's going to be a very crowded game as you play through the early mid-game. Now, something to keep in mind I do want to point out is that because you only need 1 squad member to be alive to respawn your whole team, you know, if this fight is not going well, try and send one of your squad members with like shockwaves or something to fly and disengage, because if they can stay alive, even with 1 HP, they can get your whole team back up and you can continue the game. So just keep that in mind. Finally, let's have a conversation about the state of healing. There were periods in Chapter 1 where Siphon did exist in the regular game, which is late Season 7 or early Season 8. There is 0 Siphon in this mode. And it's a very hectic mode, but because you're not getting Siphon, I really think you should be running at least 2 heals because you're not getting automatic health off of eliminating other players. So if you want to play aggressively, you really need to have at least 2 heals to be able to self-sustain. Yes, there's respawns, but when you respawn, all you get is a gray AR and no shield. So you don't want to be respawning unless you need to. So I'd really say more heals is going to be king in this game mode. And that point especially stands true once respawning is turned off, as since you can't respawn, you know, if you have more health than your opponent, you're going to win that engagement. And without Siphon, I really do think 2 or even 3 heals is not a bad idea. Especially considering that overall SMGs are pretty weak. You don't really need SMGs if you don't want to run it. So just something to keep in mind there. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you're finding this game mode fun. And I'll catch you in the next one.